What happens when a lie is more powerful than a heartbeat? For Isabel Sterling, her husband's name was a shield, a promise of a perfect life carved in gold and whispered in the most exclusive circles of London. She had the mansion, the glamour, and the one thing she'd always dreamed of: a child growing within her, a true heir to the Sterling fortune. But in the shadows of their perfect world, a venomous whisper was taking root. A mistress, a lie about a phantom pregnancy, and a husband blinded by betrayal. This isn't a story about a simple affair. It's the story of how a millionaire, in a single devastating act, chose to believe a calculated deception and threw his genuinely pregnant wife out into the cold, unforgiving night. Prepare yourselves, because the truth is always more shocking than the lie. The Sterling residence, a palatial white stucco mansion overlooking Regent's Park, was less a home and more a monument to Damien Sterling's success. Its gardens were meticulously sculpted. Its windows gleamed like polished diamonds, and inside the air itself seemed to hum with the quiet, confident thrum of immense wealth. Damien, at 34, was the architect of this empire. The CEO of Sterling Innovations, a tech conglomerate that had disrupted global logistics. He was sharp, decisive, and possessed a charisma that could command a boardroom or charm a princess with equal ease. His wife Isabel was the mansion's soul. She was not the product of a corporate merger or a social climbing family. She was a former art historian whose quiet intelligence and gentle grace had captivated Damien 5 years prior. She moved through the cavernous rooms not as a conqueror, but as a caretaker, replacing the coldness of marble with the warmth of fresh flowers and the echo of a kind word to the staff. To the outside world, they were the perfect couple: power and grace, ambition and heart. For weeks, Isabel had been holding a secret, a precious, fragile thing she kept wrapped in silent joy. She was pregnant. After 2 years of quiet hope and hushed disappointments, the confirmation from her doctor felt like the sun breaking through a perpetual fog. She planned to tell Damien on their anniversary, to present him with a tiny pair of hand-knitted booties she'd hidden in her wardrobe, a tangible promise of the future he claimed he wanted. The first tremor in her perfect world was subtle, a name spoken with a little too much frequency. Chloe Vance. Chloe closed the Hong Kong deal, Damien would announce over dinner, his eyes fixed on his phone. She's a killer, absolutely ruthless. Chloe reorganized the PR division. The board is thrilled, he'd mention as they dressed for a gala. She thinks 3 steps ahead of everyone. Isabel pictured this Chloe as a sharp-shouldered, severe woman in a power suit. She felt a prickle of professional admiration for her, a woman succeeding in her husband's cutthroat world. She never imagined her as a threat, because in Isabel's world, love and loyalty were the bedrock upon which everything else was built. The first time she met Chloe was at a company charity gala held at the Victoria and Albert Museum. Isabel, radiant in a deep sapphire gown that subtly disguised the very beginnings of her new secret, was standing by Damien's side. He was mid-flow describing a new AI venture to a cluster of investors when a woman glided up to them. She wasn't severe at all. Chloe Vance was stunning, with a mane of fiery red hair, eyes the color of jade, and a smile that was both dazzling and predatory. She wore a backless emerald dress that seemed poured onto her statuesque frame. "Isabel, darling," Damien said, turning with a brilliant smile. "This is the miracle worker I've been telling you about. Chloe Vance. Chloe, my wife, Isabel. Chloe's eyes swept over Isabel in a fraction of a second, a flicker of assessment that was so quick, Isabel almost missed it. But she didn't. It was the way a predator sizes up its prey. "It is an absolute honor to finally meet you." Chloe purred, her voice a low, husky melody. She extended a hand, her long, crimson nails brushing against Isabel's skin. "Damien speaks so highly of you. He says you're his anchor." The word anchor sounded less like a compliment and more like a weight. Isabel smiled graciously, a lifetime of decorum kicking in. "It's lovely to meet you too, Chloe. Damien is very proud of the work you're doing." Throughout the evening, Isabel watched her. Chloe was a master of her craft. She orbited Damien, never too close, never too far. She'd lean in to whisper a comment, her hand briefly touching his arm. She would laugh at his jokes with a fervor that felt just a little too practiced. To everyone else, she was the perfect deferential employee. To Isabel, a cold knot of dread began to tighten in her stomach. It was a feeling she couldn't name, an intuition she couldn't prove. Later that week, the dread was given a name. Damien came home late, smelling of expensive whiskey and a faint, unfamiliar perfume, a heady scent of jasmine and spice. He was tired, he said, a brutal day of negotiations. As he took off his jacket, something small and silver fell from his pocket, clattering onto the marble floor of their dressing room. Isabel bent down to pick it up. It was a single earring, a delicate modern design of a silver serpent. She'd seen its twin dangling from Chloe Vance's ear at the gala. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She held it up. "Damien, what is this?" He glanced at it, his expression unreadable. "Oh, that must be Chloe's. We were all working late in the conference room. She must have dropped it. I'll have my assistant return it tomorrow." His explanation was smooth, plausible, but the ease with which he said it, the lack of surprise, sent a shard of ice through Isabel's veins. He didn't meet her eyes. He just walked into the shower, leaving her standing there, the silver serpent feeling like a brand in her palm, its cold metal a stark contrast to the warm, living secret she held in her womb. The lie had been born, and Isabel, standing in her gilded cage, was about to find out how easily its golden bars could be bent into a weapon. The discovery of the earring shifted the atmosphere in the Sterling mansion from one of quiet luxury to one of tense, unspoken suspicion. Isabel tried to dismiss it, to tell herself she was being paranoid, hormonal even. But the seed of doubt, once planted, began to sprout insidious roots. Chloe's name was no longer just a mention of professional success. It became a constant, invasive presence. Damien's phone, once left casually on the nightstand, was now perpetually screen down. He had emergency late-night calls that required him to step out onto the balcony, his voice a low, urgent murmur carried away by the London wind. Business trips to Zurich and Singapore were added to his calendar at the last minute, trips Chloe was also coincidentally required to attend. Chloe, for her part, began a campaign of subtle, psychological warfare. One afternoon, a bouquet of exotic blood-red orchids arrived at the house. The card, in a flamboyant script, read, "To the Sterling home, a little something to brighten the place up. We all work so hard to keep it running. CV." It was a power play disguised as a gift, a declaration that she too was a pillar of Damien's world. Isabel quietly told the housekeeper to put them in a distant guest room. The gaslighting was masterful. When Isabel, her voice trembling slightly, asked Damien why he was so distant, he would look at her with feigned concern. "Distant, darling. I'm closing the biggest merger of my career. I'm under immense pressure. I need your support, not accusations." When she mentioned the constant texts he received at all hours, he sighed with exasperation. "It's a global business, Isabel. It's 9 a.m. in Tokyo. Do you want me to just switch off? Chloe is managing the Asian markets for me. She has to keep me updated." He made her feel needy, paranoid, and worst of all, ungrateful. He was building an empire for them, he insisted. Why couldn't she see that meanwhile, Isabel's pregnancy was progressing? Morning sickness became a daily reality, a wave of nausea that she had to hide, attributing it to a migraine or a bad oyster. She hadn't yet told Damien. The perfect, joyful moment she had envisioned was gone, replaced by a gnawing anxiety. How could she bring a child into a home where its own mother felt like an intruder? The breaking point came during a weekend they were meant to spend at their country estate in the Cotswolds. It was their anniversary. Isabel had packed the tiny booties, determined to reclaim their relationship, to remind him of the life they had promised to build together. On Friday afternoon, as she was about to call their driver, Damien walked into the library, his face a mask of regret. "Darling, I'm so sorry." He began, the words already sounding hollow. "Something's come up. A massive server breach at the Frankfurt office. It's all hands on deck. I have to fly out tonight." Isabel's heart sank. "Tonight, Damien? It's our anniversary weekend." "I know, and I feel terrible. Believe me, I'd rather be with you." He walked over and kissed her forehead, a gesture that felt more like a formality than an act of affection. "Chloe is already at the airport, sorting out the logistics with the German team. I have to go." The casual mention of her name was like a slap. "Of course, Chloe is there." Damien's eyes hardened. "What is that supposed to mean?" "She's my senior VP. Her job is to handle crises. Are we really going to do this again, Isabel?" "Right now." Defeated. She just shook her head. "No, go. Save your company." He left. The house fell silent, vast and empty. That evening, Isabel sat alone in their cavernous dining room, the chef's celebratory meal untouched. She scrolled through her phone, a masochistic impulse guiding her fingers to a popular high society Instagram blog. And there it was, a spotted post. A grainy photo taken within the last hour from inside the exclusive private terminal at Heathrow. It showed two figures boarding a private jet. Damien, his arm casually draped around the shoulders of a woman with unmistakable fiery red hair. They were laughing. The caption read, "Tech mogul Damien Sterling and a mystery redhead off for a romantic getaway. Looks like business is booming." The phone slipped from her numb fingers and clattered onto the table. There was no server breach in Frankfurt. The only thing in crisis was her marriage, the Cotswolds, their anniversary, their future. It was all a lie to facilitate a weekend away with his mistress. A wave of nausea more violent than any morning sickness washed over her. But this time it was followed by a walled-hard clarity, the intuition she'd tried to suppress, the whispers she'd tried to ignore. It was all real. She was not paranoid. She was being played for a fool. She walked upstairs, her steps heavy, with a grief so profound it felt like a physical weight. She opened her wardrobe and took out the small, beautifully wrapped box. She untied the silk ribbon and lifted the lid. The tiny cream-colored booties lay nestled in tissue paper, a symbol of a future that now felt like a cruel joke. Tears finally streamed down her face, hot and silent. She was alone in a house that no longer felt like a home, pregnant with the child of a man who was at that very moment in the arms of another woman. The serpent's whisper had become a roar, and it had devoured her world whole. Damien returned from his crisis in Frankfurt, looking refreshed and triumphant. He presented Isabel with an expensive diamond bracelet from a boutique in Geneva, a guilt offering she accepted with a quiet, hollow thank you. She said nothing of the photo. Confronting him felt futile. She was gathering her thoughts, trying to figure out what to do, not just for herself, but for the tiny life she was carrying. She needed a plan, not a screaming match. Her silence, however, was misinterpreted by Damien as acquiescence. To him, the storm had passed. For Chloe, it was the perfect opportunity to launch her final devastating assault. The attack came on a Tuesday evening. Damien was home, a rarity. They were having a tense, mostly silent dinner when his phone buzzed. It was a text. He glanced at it, and the color drained from his face. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the marble floor. "I have to go out," he said, his voice strained. "Another crisis?" Isabel asked, her tone flat. "Yes. Something personal. I'll be back later." He was gone before she could say another word. He didn't come home until 3 a.m. He looked shattered. His suit rumpled, his face etched with a mixture of horror and something else. A grim, conflicted responsibility. He found Isabel waiting up for him in their bedroom, a book lying unread in her lap. He didn't apologize for the hour. He just stood at the foot of the bed and said the words that would detonate their lives. "It's Chloe," he said, his voice raspy. "Isabel. She's pregnant." The world tilted on its axis. Isabel stared at him, sure she had misheard. "What? She's pregnant?" he repeated, running a hand through his hair distractedly. "She told me tonight. She's about 8 weeks along. She's terrified. She didn't want to tell me. She didn't want to ruin this." He gestured vaguely at the opulent room at their life. Isabel felt a hysterical laugh bubble in her chest, but it came out as a strangled gasp. "She's pregnant. After your business trip to Frankfurt." It happened before that. He snapped, his guilt manifesting as anger. "It was a mistake. A couple of times after we worked late. It was meaningless, Isabel, I swear. It just happened. A meaningless mistake now has a heartbeat, apparently." She shot back, the sarcasm dripping with pain. Damien flinched. He started pacing, the frantic energy of a trapped animal. She was going to handle it on her own. She never wanted to be a problem. But she had a scare tonight, some cramping. She went to the hospital. Everything is okay, but the doctor, it made it all real for her. She broke down. She felt she had to tell me. Every word was a carefully rehearsed line fed to him by a master manipulator. Chloe had laid the perfect trap. The scare, the reluctance, the breakdown. It was all designed to make him feel like her protector, to paint her as a tragic, vulnerable victim. And then Chloe delivered her masterpiece of deception. The next day, Damien sat Isabel down in their sunroom, a place where they used to read the Sunday papers together. He looked like a judge about to deliver a death sentence. "Chloe wanted you to see this," he said, sliding a photograph across the glass table. "She wants to be transparent." Isabel picked it up. It was a sonogram, a grainy black and white image of a tiny bean-shaped fetus. The top corner of the printout had a name, C. Vance, and a date from the previous evening. Isabel stared at it. Her own first sonogram picture was tucked away in her bedside table drawer. It looked so similar. It was the universal image of early life. But this one felt like a forgery, a desecration. It was a lie printed on thermal paper. Chloe had likely downloaded a stock image from the internet and paid a graphic designer a paltry sum to Photoshop her name onto it. It was a simple, brutally effective deception. "She feels terrible about this, Damien said, using her old pet name, a desperate attempt to soften the blow. "She knows she's destroyed everything. She even suggested she could go away, have the baby somewhere else, and I could support them from a distance." The calculated magnanimity of the offer was Chloe's checkmate. It made her seem noble, self-sacrificing. It was designed to make Damien say what he said next. "But I can't do that," he said, his jaw tight. "I can't let my child grow up without a father. I caused this. I have to take responsibility." Isabel looked from the fake sonogram to her husband's tormented face. He was completely ensnared. Chloe hadn't just seduced him. She had colonized his conscience. He saw himself as a man of honor, forced to do the right thing in a terrible situation. He didn't see the puppeteer pulling his strings. She felt a sudden, profound calm. The shock had given way to a chilling resolve. The game was no longer about saving her marriage. It was about survival. "And what does taking responsibility look like, Damien?" she asked, her voice steady, devoid of the tears he expected. He looked at her, and for the first time she saw the cold, hard calculation in his eyes. The CEO was back. He was managing a crisis, and she was now a liability. "I don't know yet," he said, "but things are going to have to change." Isabel knew exactly what that meant. The phantom pregnancy had done its work. It had created a phantom heir, and in the Sterling Empire there was only room for one. The days that followed were a cold war fought in the silent, opulent corridors of the mansion. Damien treated Isabel with a detached, clinical politeness that was more chilling than any argument. He was an executive managing a hostile takeover of his own life, and she was the asset being liquidated. He had lawyers on the phone at all hours, their hushed conversations about settlements and non-disclosure agreements drifting from his study. Chloe, meanwhile, was nowhere and everywhere. She didn't come to the house, but her presence was a toxic miasma. There were florist deliveries of funereal white lilies, Chloe's favorite, and calls that Damien would take with a pained, "I'm with Isabel right now. I'll call you back," a performance of sensitivity that was purely for his own benefit. Isabel knew her time was running out. The lie was solidifying, hardening into an accepted truth in Damien's mind. Her own truth, her own secret, felt fragile and powerless against it. She had to tell him. It was her last desperate card to play. She chose a Thursday night. A storm was brewing over London, the sky a bruised purple. The dramatic fallacy was not lost on her. She found Damien in his study, a glass of amber liquid in his hand, staring out at the city lights. "Damien, we need to talk," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. "Not with lawyers, not about settlements. About us." He turned his face weary. "Isabel, there's nothing left to say. My lawyers will be in touch with yours. I will be generous. You will be comfortable for the rest of your life." "I don't want your money," she said, stepping closer. "I want my husband, the man I married. The man who would never believe a lie like this." "A lie?" He let out a short, bitter laugh. "I've seen the sonogram, Isabel. I was with her at the hospital. This is real." "The hospital you took her to after she called you with her scare," Isabel countered. "Did you sit in the examination room with her? Did you speak to the doctor yourself? Or did you wait in the hallway while she crafted her story?" He faltered for a second, a flicker of doubt in his eyes before it was extinguished by his own guilt. "Stop it. You're just trying to twist this." "No," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "I'm trying to tell you the truth. Chloe is not the only one with news, Damien." This was it. She took a deep breath, her hand instinctively going to her still flat stomach. "I'm pregnant, Damien." The words hung in the air between them. The only sound was the distant rumble of thunder. Damien stared at her, his expression slowly shifting from weary frustration to cold, disbelieving fury. "What did you just say?" he whispered. "I'm pregnant," she repeated, her voice gaining strength. "I'm 12 weeks along. I was going to tell you on our anniversary before all this. I have the doctor's report. I have my own sonogram." She saw the flicker of hope in his eyes, a desperate desire to believe her. But Chloe's poison had seeped too deep. The lie was a fortress, and her truth was a pebble thrown against its walls. He shook his head slowly, a cruel, pitying smile twisting his lips. "Wow. I have to hand it to you, Isabel. That's quite a move. Desperate, but clever." The condescension in his voice stole her breath. "Move? You think this is a move? This is our child, Damien. Our child!" he roared, his control finally snapping. He slammed his glass down on the desk, whiskey sloshing over the polished wood. Don't you dare use that to try and trap me." Chloe gets pregnant by accident, and you suddenly, miraculously, are pregnant too. What a coincidence. Did you run out and fake a sonogram this afternoon after my lawyer called? The accusation was so vile, so far beyond the pale, that Isabel felt a wave of dizziness. He was comparing her to Chloe, accusing her of the very deception she was a victim of. "How dare you?" she whispered, tears of rage and heartbreak finally spilling down her cheeks. "I have loved you. I have stood by you. And you stand there and accuse me of something so monstrous. I'm accusing you of being a liar," he shouted, his face contorted. "Chloe, for all her faults, was honest with me. She was terrified, but she told the truth. You're trying to fight her, lie with a bigger lie, and I won't have it." The thunder cracked directly overhead, and the heavens opened. Rain began to lash against the window panes, a torrent of nature's fury mirroring the destruction inside. "I want you out," Damien said, his voice dropping to a low, lethal command. "I want you out of this house. Tonight." "What?" Isabel gasped, stumbling back. "Damien. No, it's pouring with rain. Where would I go?" "I don't care," he said, his eyes as cold and hard as granite. He turned his back on her, staring out at the storm. "Go to a hotel. Go to your parents. Go to hell for all I care. Just get out of my sight. My security team will escort you. Pack a bag. You have 30 minutes. He didn't look at her again. The finality in his voice was absolute. There was no appeal, no reprieve. The man who had vowed to love and protect her was casting her out into a storm, believing she was a liar and a fraud. Numbly, Isabel walked out of the study and up the grand staircase. Two stoic men in dark suits, members of Damien's personal security detail, were already waiting in the hallway. They watched her with impassive eyes as she walked into her bedroom and pulled out a suitcase. She packed mechanically a few clothes, her toiletries the file from her obstetrician, containing the proof of her pregnancy, and the small box with the baby booties. She was weeping, but her sobs were silent, her body shaking with a grief too profound for sound. 30 minutes later, she was standing at the grand entrance of her home. One of the security guards held an umbrella over her. The other had placed her single suitcase on the rain-slicked driveway. Damien was nowhere to be seen. He hadn't even afforded her the decency of a final glance. The heavy oak door clicked shut behind her, the sound echoing with terrifying finality. She was Isabel Sterling no more. She was just a woman alone in the rain with a broken heart and a secret child that her own husband refused to believe was real. As she stood there shivering in the deluge, she made a vow. She would not break. She would survive this. And she would bring her child into the world, a world far away from the poisonous lies of the House of Sterling. The taxi's headlights cut through the relentless curtain of rain, the wipers fighting a losing battle. Isabel gave the driver the only address that came to mind, a small flat in Camden. It was a world away from Regent's Park, a world of brick facades, bustling markets, and the comforting anonymity of ordinary life. It was the home of Maria Flores, her closest friend. Maria, a fiery and fiercely loyal journalist, whom Isabel had known since university, opened the door in her pajamas, her eyes widening in shock at the sight of her drenched, heart-broken friend standing on her doorstep with a single suitcase. "Izzy, my God, what happened?" The dam of Isabel's composure broke. In the warmth of Maria's tiny living room, surrounded by stacks of books and the smell of brewed coffee, she collapsed into her friend's arms and told her everything. The affair, the lies, the phantom pregnancy, the sonogram, and finally the brutal expulsion. When she finished, her voice raw, Maria was radiating a cold fury. That monster. I'm going to write an exposé that will strip him bare. Sterling Innovations will be Sterling in ruins when I'm done with him." "No," Isabel whispered, wiping her eyes. "Not yet. A public fight is what he understands. It's what Chloe would do. I can't think about that now." Then, taking a shaky breath, she revealed the one part of the story that mattered most. "He kicked me out because he thinks I lied to trap him. Maria, I'm pregnant. For real." Maria's anger instantly melted into profound concern. She pulled Isabel into another hug, this one fiercely protective. "Okay," she said, her voice firm. "Okay, this changes everything. Forget him. Forget the mansion and the money. This is about you and this baby now. You're safe here. This is your home." The days that followed blurred into a haze of grief and adjustment. The opulence of her former life was stripped away, replaced by the humble reality of Maria's flat. The king-sized bed was replaced by a pull-out sofa. The walk-in closet became a small corner of Maria's wardrobe. The personal chef was replaced by takeout cartons, and Maria's well-intentioned but often burnt attempts at cooking. Yet in this small space, Isabel found something she hadn't had in the mansion for months: safety. She spent the first week in a fog, but Maria was a relentless force of nature. She made sure Isabel ate, forced her on walks through Camden Market, and steadfastly refused to let her drown in sorrow. One morning, Maria came home from a meeting and threw a file onto the coffee table. "Right. First things first. We need to secure you. I called in a favor with a friend who works in family law. She's the best. We need to document everything. Your pregnancy, his assets, Chloe's ridiculously transparent lies. We fight him with facts, Izzy, not with tears." The lawyer, a sharp, empathetic woman named Anya, met with Isabel the next day. For the first time, Isabel laid out her proof. Her doctor's reports. Her own sonogram, dated weeks before Chloe's supposed revelation. A timeline of Damien's business trips. Anya listened, her expression growing more resolute with every word. He hasn't just abandoned his pregnant wife, Anya stated, her voice grim. He has inflicted extreme emotional distress based on a provable fraud. Isabel, when you're ready, we can make him pay for this. But for now, your health and the baby's health are the priority. The process of disentanglement was brutal. Damien's lawyers sent over a settlement offer. It was, as he promised, generous, a lump sum that would keep her in luxury for life, contingent on her signing an ironclad NDA that would prevent her from ever speaking about Damien Chloe or the circumstances of their separation. It was hush money designed to erase her from his history. Looking at the document, something inside Isabel hardened. The soft, forgiving woman who had curated art and arranged flowers was being forged into something new in the fires of her betrayal. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about her child, a child Damien had disowned based on a lie. "I'm not signing it," she told Anya. "Are you sure?" Anya asked gently. "It's a lot of money, Isabel. Security." "It's not security, it's a gag," Isabel replied, her voice clear and firm. "He doesn't get to buy my silence. He doesn't get to erase his child, reject the offer, all of it." She began to build a new life, a small and quiet one. She used the last of her personal savings money from before her marriage to pay her way. She found a new obstetrician in her neighborhood, a kind, motherly woman who knew nothing of the sterling name and simply called her Isabel. Hearing her own name unburdened by his felt like a quiet liberation. She and Maria would talk late into the night. Maria, the journalist, was convinced Chloe's lie had a fatal flaw. "Pregnancies have a deadline, Izzy. 9 months. What's her plan?" A convenient miscarriage in a few months. A premature birth of a doll. The lie is unsustainable. We just have to wait for it to collapse. As her own belly began to show a small, definite curve replacing the flat stomach of her past, Isabel's resolve solidified into steel. Every flutter she felt inside her was a reminder of her truth. Damien could have his empire, his mistress, and his lie. She had something infinitely more real. One afternoon, while walking by a small park, she saw a father pushing his daughter on a swing. The girl's laughter echoed in the crisp autumn air. A pang of sorrow hit her, a vision of the family she was supposed to have. But then she placed a hand on her stomach. The sorrow was quickly replaced by a fierce, primal protectiveness. She would be that father and that mother. She would be enough. The world had taken her husband, her home, and her name. It could not take her strength. It could not take her child. While Isabel was building a new life from the ashes of her old one, Chloe Vance was living a fantasy. She had moved into the Sterling mansion, a triumphant conqueror. She wore Isabel's robes, hosted dinner parties with Damien's business associates, and played the part of the tragic, glowing mother-to-be to perfection. She complained of morning sickness, though the staff noticed she had a hearty appetite in private. She redecorated what was to be the nursery in bold, garish colors that grated on the mansion's quiet elegance. She carried her fake sonogram picture in her wallet, ready to whip it out at the slightest provocation. Damien, consumed by guilt and a desperate need to do the right thing, catered to her every whim. He bought her extravagant gifts, hired a personal nutritionist, and spoke about their child with a forced, almost frantic enthusiasm. But beneath the surface, a seed of unease was beginning to sprout in his own mind. He had loved Isabel's quiet strength and intelligence. Chloe's constant drama and insatiable need for attention were beginning to wear on him. The first major crack in Chloe's story appeared via an unlikely source, Damien's mother, Eleanor Sterling. Eleanor was a formidable woman, old money personified. She was shrewd observant and had never been particularly fond of Chloe's naked ambition. She had adored Isabel. When Damien told her his version of the story that Isabel had lied about a pregnancy to trap him after he'd honorably confessed to fathering Chloe's child, Eleanor had remained silent, her expression unreadable. She invited Damien and a delicately conditioned Chloe to Sunday lunch at Claridge's, her preferred bastion of tradition and discretion. The lunch was a masterclass in subtle interrogation. "You must be so thrilled, Chloe." Eleanor began, her diamond earrings glittering. "A first grandchild is such a blessing. Have you chosen a hospital? I have an excellent man on Harley Street. He delivered all the royal babies you know." Chloe, momentarily flustered, replied, "Oh, we have someone. A wonderful doctor. Very private." "Of course," Eleanor said smoothly. "And the morning sickness, you poor dear. Is it dreadful? Awful?" Chloe sighed, placing a hand on her perfectly flat stomach. "I can barely keep anything down." She then proceeded to order the lobster thermidor and a side of truffle fries. Eleanor's gaze sharpened. Later, as they were leaving, Eleanor took Damien's arm. "She seems remarkably robust for someone so afflicted," she commented dryly. "And for someone supposedly 4 months pregnant, she doesn't seem to have told her tailor. That dress is this season's couture, and it's a perfect sample size." Damien dismissed it as his mother's typical frostiness, but the comment lingered. The lie began to truly unravel a month later. Chloe knew she was approaching the point where her pregnancy would have to become visually obvious. She started stuffing small cushions under her clothes, a clumsy attempt to create a baby bump. The effect was lumpy and unconvincing. The household staff, loyal to the memory of Isabel's kindness, began to whisper. The fatal mistake came from Chloe's own arrogance. Convinced she had everyone fooled, she became careless. She needed a dramatic event, something to cement her status and perhaps rush a wedding. She decided to stage a tragic miscarriage. One evening she called Damien in a panic. "The cramping is back. It's bad. Damien, really bad." He rushed home to find her collapsed at the bottom of the grand staircase, weeping hysterically. I think I'm losing the baby," she sobbed. He scooped her up and raced her to the hospital, the one she had pre-selected. After a frantic hour in the waiting room, a grim-faced Chloe emerged with a doctor who delivered the devastating news that they had lost the baby. Damien was genuinely heartbroken. The phantom child had become real in his mind, a symbol of his mistake and his chance at redemption. He held a weeping Chloe, comforting her, feeling the weight of the tragedy. But Eleanor Sterling was not heartbroken. She was suspicious. A fall down the stairs. A convenient miscarriage, just as the pregnancy should have been showing. It was all too theatrical. Too neat. Without telling Damien, she made a phone call. The next day, a discreet private investigator, a former MI6 agent she kept on retainer for family matters, began to look into one Chloe Vance. The results came back a week later in a slim, devastating file. The PI had been thorough. The hospital Chloe had gone to for her initial scare had no record of a Chloe Vance being admitted for pregnancy-related issues that night. She had simply walked into the A&E, complained of stomach pain, and left an hour later. The doctor who had delivered the news of the miscarriage was not an OB-GYN. He was a junior resident in dermatology, who it turned out was Chloe's cousin. The PI had tracked down the graphic designer, who for $200 had expertly photoshopped Chloe's name and a date onto a stock sonogram image she'd downloaded from the internet. Most damning of all, The investigator had accessed flight manifests. The emergency trip to Frankfurt, the private jet, had not flown to Germany. Its flight plan, paid for on Damien's corporate account, was a round trip to the Maldives. Eleanor read the report in her silent, sunlit drawing room, her tea growing cold. The sheer audacity, the cold-blooded cruelty of the deception was breathtaking. That evening, she summoned Damien to her townhouse. She didn't speak. She simply handed him the file. He read it, his face turning from confusion to disbelief, then to a sickening ashen white. He saw the flight plan to the Maldives, a romantic trip disguised as a work crisis. He saw the invoice from the graphic designer for the ultrasound. He saw the interview with the dermatologist cousin. The entire edifice of his new life, built on a foundation of guilt and honor, crumbled into dust. He wasn't the protector of a wronged woman. He was the gullible fool in a con artist's masterpiece. The lie about Chloe's pregnancy was exposed. And in that horrifying moment of clarity, a far more terrible truth crashed down on him. With the force of a physical blow, Isabel had been telling the truth. He had thrown his own pregnant wife, the woman who had only ever loved him, out into the night. He had called her a liar, a manipulator, and had abandoned her and their unborn child based on a cheap, cruel fiction. The weight of his own monstrous actions crushed him. He sank into a chair, the file slipping from his nerveless fingers, the sound of his own ragged breath filling the silent room. He had lost everything, and it was no one's fault but his own. The drive back to the Regent's Park mansion was a blur of self-loathing for Damien. Every street lamp illuminated his foolishness. Every shadow seemed to mock his blindness. He walked into the house not as its master, but as a man returning to the scene of a terrible crime. He found Chloe in the drawing room, sipping champagne and flipping through a catalogue of ridiculously expensive baby furniture, a macabre postscript to her fabricated tragedy. She was playing the part of the grieving mother, but her eyes held a spark of triumph. She believed she was now unassailable, permanently bonded to him through their shared loss. "Darling," she began, a pout on her lips. "I was thinking maybe for the nursery, even though it would be nice to have it ready for when we try again." Damien looked at her. Truly looked at her for the first time, without the filter of guilt. He saw the greed in her eyes, the hard, calculating lines of her face. He saw the predator, and he felt nothing but disgust. He tossed the investigator's file onto the coffee table in front of her. It landed with a heavy thud. "Frankfurt, Chloe?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "Or was the weather better in the Maldives?" Chloe froze the champagne flute halfway to her lips. Her eyes darted to the file, and the color drained from her face. She knew instantly that the game was over. I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, her voice losing its sultry confidence. "Oh, I think you do." Damien continued, the fury building in him, cold and precise. "I think you know all about the graphic designer you paid to fake a sonogram. You know about your dermatologist cousin at the hospital. You know that you were never, ever pregnant." He leaned, in his voice a venomous whisper. "You played me. You destroyed my marriage, my life, based on a lie. You let me throw my wife, my pregnant wife, out of her home." Chloe's composure shattered. The mask of sophistication fell away to reveal a desperate, cornered creature. "I did it because I love you," she shrieked, her voice shrill. "She didn't appreciate you. She was an anchor holding you back. I was trying to set you free. Love." Damien laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. "You don't know the meaning of the word. You love my name, my money. You saw a life you wanted, and you decided to burn down anyone who stood in your way. He stood up straight. Get out. What? She gasped. Get your things. Everything you came with. Nothing more. My security will watch you pack. I want you out of this house, out of my company, and out of my life within the hour. If I ever see your face or hear your name again, I will release this file to every news outlet in the country. I will sue you for fraud. I will destroy you so completely you won't be able to get a job cleaning toilets. Now get out. Her face contorted in a mask of pure hatred. She scrambled from the room. Damien was left alone, standing in the silent monument to his own stupidity. The victory was ashes in his mouth. Getting rid of Chloe was easy. The real reckoning was yet to come. His first frantic call was to Isabel's parents. They informed him in glacial tones that they had not heard from their daughter since the day she left him, and had no idea where she was. His next calls were to her old friends, the few whose numbers he had. They either hung up on him or told him they had no intention of helping him. He was a pariah. He had been so insulated in his world of wealth, he had no idea how to find a person who didn't want to be found. He hired his own private investigator, a different one with a single desperate instruction. Find Isabel. For weeks, there was nothing. It was as if she had vanished from the face of the earth. Damien lived in a state of torment, haunted by the memory of her face as he'd accused her of lying. He wandered the empty rooms of the mansion, each one a testament to her absence. He saw her ghost everywhere in the garden she had loved, in the library, where she used to read, in the curve of the staircase where Chloe had staged her pathetic drama. Then, after nearly a month of searching, the investigator called. I've found her. Damien's heart leapt. Where is she? Is she okay? Well, she's not in London, the investigator said carefully. She's in a small coastal town in Cornwall, Porthleven. She's been living a very quiet life. There was a pause. There's something else you should know, Mr. Sterling. It seems she's not alone. What do you mean? Damien asked, a new cold dread creeping in. Is she with someone? In a manner of speaking, the investigator replied. According to my local sources, she suffered a health scare about a month ago, some complication with the pregnancy. She was helped by a local GP, a Dr. Ben Carter. He's been looking after her since. They've become close. He's a widower, a very respected man in the community. People see them walking on the beach together. He's very protective of her. The image crashed into Damien's mind with the force of a physical blow. Isabel, his Isabel, walking on a beach with another man. A kind man. A doctor who had helped her when he, her husband, had thrown her away. The irony was so cruel, so perfectly just, that it almost broke him. He had created a vacuum, and the world, in its fairness, had filled it with someone better. The investigator continued. And Mr. Sterling, one more thing. She gave birth 3 days ago. To a boy. Mother and son are both healthy. Damien sank to the floor, the phone clattering from his hand. A son. He had a son. A son who had been born, not in a state-of-the-art private hospital suite, but in a small town by the sea. A son whose first days were being watched over not by his father, but by a kind stranger. He had been so obsessed with uncovering Chloe's lie that he hadn't fully grasped the reality of Isabel's truth. He wasn't just trying to find his wronged wife anymore. He was trying to find his son. He booked a car. He didn't care about Dr. Ben Carter. He didn't care about anything but getting there. He had to see her. He had to see his son. He had to try, however futilely, to beg for a forgiveness. he knew he would never deserve. The 5-hour drive to Portleven was a pilgrimage of shame. The Rolls-Royce, a symbol of his insulated power, felt alien as it navigated the narrow, salt-sprayed lanes of Cornwall. This was a different world, one grounded in earth and sea, not glass and steel. He found the address the investigator had provided, a modest, whitewashed cottage overlooking the harbour. Its small garden blooming with defiant coastal flowers. It radiated a warmth his mansion had never possessed. His heart hammered against his ribs as he walked to the front door. How could "I'm sorry" ever be enough to bridge the chasm he had created? Before his knuckles could even touch the wood, the door opened. A man with kind, steady eyes stood before him, his posture calm but protective. It was clearly Dr. Ben Carter. "Can I help you?" Ben asked, his voice even. "I'm Damien Sterling." Damien said the name, tasting like ash in his mouth. "I'm here to see Isabel." "She's resting," Ben replied, a wall of quiet defense. "She's been through a great deal. The unspoken accusation because of you was deafening." "Please," Damien begged, stripped of his usual authority. "I need to see my son." From within the cottage, a voice stronger and calmer than he remembered cut through the tension. "It's all right, Ben. Let him in." Damien stepped inside. The cottage was cozy and filled with light. There in an armchair sat Isabel. The haunted look he had last seen was gone, replaced by a profound, serene strength. She looked tired but at peace, and nestled in her arms, wrapped in a soft blue blanket, was a tiny, sleeping baby boy. Damien's breath caught in his throat. He stared at his son, a perfect living testament to the truth he had so cruelly denied. "He's beautiful," Damien whispered the words, thick with unshed tears. "His name is Leo," Isabel said. Her voice was level, holding neither warmth nor malice. It was the voice of a woman who had weathered his storm and reached a distant shore. "Isabel, Damien started, his prepared speeches crumbling into dust. "I know everything. About Chloe, the lies. I was a blind, arrogant fool. What I did to you is unforgivable. I threw you out. I called you a liar. It was monstrous. I don't expect forgiveness. I just had to see him. To see you. I'll give you anything, the divorce, the house, my entire fortune. Just please let me be his father." Isabel looked down at the sleeping baby, then back at Damien, her eyes clear and assessing. "You think money fixes this? That's always been your answer, hasn't it? Settle the account and move on." She stood up slowly, her movements deliberate. "When you threw me out, you didn't just abandon me. You abandoned him. The stress of what you did sent me into premature labor. Ben found me collapsed in a store. He saved my life," she said, her voice dropping, each word a carefully placed stone. "He saved our son's life." Damien visibly flinched, the truth of her words a physical blow. "So no Damien," she continued, standing directly before him. "You don't get to just walk in here and be his father. Oh, that is a title you have to earn. You don't get to buy your way back." Her gaze was unflinching. "If you want to be in Leo's life, it will be on my terms. You will sell the mansion. I never want to see it again. You will establish an independently managed trust for Leo, and you will get professional help. You will find out why you destroy what is good and real in your life. You will do that work." She paused, letting the verdict settle. "But us. There is no us anymore. You broke that beyond repair. That is a consequence you have to accept." Her expression softened, not with forgiveness, but with a final heart-breaking finality. She held the bundled baby out to him. "Now," she said quietly, "if you are ready, you may hold your son." With trembling hands, Damien Sterling reached out and took the small, warm weight of his child into his arms. Looking down at the tiny, perfect face, the master of a global empire broke down and wept not for the life he had lost, but for the immense, terrifying journey of redemption. He was only just beginning. And so Damien Sterling's gilded world was shattered not by a market crash, but by the quiet, unshakable power of the truth. He learned the hardest lesson of all, that trust once broken cannot be bought back. It must be rebuilt painstakingly, with actions, not words. The story of Damien, Isabel, and Chloe isn't just about a mistress's lie. It's about the devastating consequences of choosing arrogance over intuition, and the incredible resilience of a woman who found her own strength when the world tried to take everything from her. What does redemption truly look like? Is it ever fully possible? Isabel has given Damien a path, but the journey is his to walk alone. This story is a powerful reminder that the most valuable things in life, love, trust, and family, are also the most fragile. They say love is blind, but obsession, ambition, and betrayal can blind you faster. Andrew Monroe was the poster child of success, a self-made millionaire with a stunning mansion in Beverly Hills, a thriving investment portfolio, and a picture-perfect marriage. Yet behind the immaculate facade, a sinister betrayal brewed. One heated night, Andrew shoved his pregnant wife, Catherine, to protect his mistress a moment that would crack his carefully curated world. Secrets simmered beneath grand chandeliers, whispered at exclusive galas, and haunted private jets en route to hidden islands. And when the truth emerged, it threatened to crumble everything he had built. Andrew Monroe sipped his champagne eyes, scanning the expansive ballroom. The annual West Coast Philanthropy Gala, hosted at the iconic Beverly Hills Hotel, was the crown jewel of the social calendar, attended by the wealthiest and most influential. Andrew was in his element among tech giants like Elon Musk, media moguls like Oprah Winfrey, and philanthropic figures like Bill Gates, who was rumored to make an appearance that evening to promote a new global health initiative. Just a decade ago, Andrew was a junior financial analyst at a modest firm in Cincinnati, meticulously scrounging for each month's rent. Today, at 33, he was a millionaire, many times over, with investment stakes in real estate, green energy, and even a thriving luxury car dealership chain. His network was formidable, his presence commanding. He had a taste for elegant suits, a penchant for grand gestures, and an unquenchable hunger for more deals, more influence, more admiration. Andrew's wife, Catherine Monroe, stood at his side, radiant in a flowing emerald gown. 7 months pregnant, she glowed with a serenity that drew the attention of countless admirers. Where Andrew's world had once been lonely, Catherine brought warmth. They married young, forging a partnership that felt unbreakable. She had witnessed his rise and gently reminded him to ground his ambition with compassion. But behind Andrew's calm facade lurked restlessness. While Catherine and their unborn child should have completed his happiness, Andrew found himself too enthralled by the world's endless temptations. He wasn't content. He wanted to forge an empire that rivaled the biggest names in American business, and with that desire came a whirlwind of new faces and endless travel. Lately, Catherine's delicate condition meant fewer lavish trips and fewer nights of partying, just the opening Andrew needed to slip into temptation. Andrew. Catherine said, her voice soft but tinged with concern. Are you all right? You seem a little distant. He plastered a reassuring smile across his face. I'm great. Just thinking about the potential partnerships tonight. His voice was breezy casual, but as soon as Catherine's gaze moved away, he scanned the crowd once more, looking for someone else. A new presence, a forbidden intrigue. Her name was Elena Rossi, an Italian-American PR executive known for her impeccable networking and unstoppable charm. She had bright blue eyes, an effortless style, and an insatiable ambition that mirrored Andrew's. A few months back, Andrew had met Elena at a tech conference in San Francisco, where she was representing a medical startup. Their connection was immediate, magnetic. They'd exchanged business cards, flirted discreetly over late-night cocktails, and eventually succumbed to an affair that neither of them fully planned, but both desired. That evening at the gala, Elena wore a shimmering silver gown, the back cut low enough to turn heads all across the ballroom. When Andrew spotted her from across the floor, a wave of adrenaline coursed through him. She met his eyes for just a second, offering a subtle tilt of her wine glass, before turning away to network with a film producer. The message was clear. I'm here, and I won't be ignored. Andrew's heart pounded as he fought to keep his composure. Catherine remained unaware of the storm brewing around her. She chatted politely with a few other pregnant wives, discussing baby names and doctor recommendations. Andrew felt a twinge of guilt as he watched Catherine, her face glowing with maternal pride. The child she carried was a symbol of their love. He'd promised himself that he would be different from the men who let success corrode their personal lives. Yet the lure of Elena's ambition and the rebellious thrill of secrecy tugged at him. The more Andrew succeeded, the more he felt bored with routine. Elena was a wildfire, unpredictable and bewitching. In fleeting moments, he feared that Catherine's gentle warmth had grown too predictable. Halfway through the evening, Andrew quietly slipped away from Catherine's side, using the excuse of checking his phone for an urgent business call. He navigated the packed ballroom, weaving past the swirling sea of tuxedos and glittering gowns, until he reached a secluded corridor near the lavish bathrooms. Elena stood there, leaning against a marble pillar, swirling her champagne. "You made me wait," she teased, arching an eyebrow. Her voice held a silky confidence. "My wife was with me," he replied, glancing over his shoulder to ensure no one was eavesdropping. "I'm here now." The corner of her mouth curved into a smile. "So you are." She stepped closer, looking into his eyes. "I missed you." Andrew closed the distance, inhaling the sweet scent of her perfume. "We're risking too much," he whispered, though the words lacked conviction. "We'll be careful," Elena promised. She brushed a fingertip across his lapel. "Because we both know we can't stay away from each other." He nodded, swallowing hard. This was the night that would set in motion a chain of events neither could predict. In that corridor, amid opulent wallpaper and hushed voices, Andrew sealed his fate with a single kiss that somehow felt more electric than all his successes combined. In the following weeks, Catherine noticed subtle changes in Andrew. He was more absent at home, frequently slipping away to urgent meetings or investor calls. Their family dinners, once a cherished ritual, became rushed affairs. His phone would light up with messages at odd hours, which he justified as time zone differences when dealing with overseas clients. Andrew's entire world had become a balancing act. On the business front, he was orchestrating the final steps to acquire a massive real estate property in downtown Los Angeles, a deal that had the potential to skyrocket his net worth and establish him as a formidable player in West Coast real estate. On the personal front, he was juggling 2 women, the mother of his child, whom he had loved for years, and the new mistress who ignited a passion he never knew he craved. But cracks began to show. Catherine sensed his growing distance. Her once delicate constitution, taxed by the stress of a complicated pregnancy, made her worry that her husband was drifting away at the most critical moment. One evening, Catherine confronted him. "Andrew," she said softly, standing in the doorway of his home office. "I've been thinking. You've been so busy lately. We hardly talk anymore. Is something wrong?" Andrew lifted his head from his laptop, eyes wary. He forced a comforting smile. "I'm fine, Kath. The new deal is massive. I'm trying to stay on top of everything so that we can." He paused, searching for the right words, "so that we can have the best future for us and the baby." She walked over gently, resting a hand on her belly. "I appreciate everything you do for us, but I worry. You've changed somehow." Guilt gnawed at him. He stood and approached her, placing a hand over hers on her belly. He remembered the first time she'd told him she was pregnant, the overwhelming joy, the tears in his eyes. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "I promise once this deal is done, I'll slow down. We'll spend more time together. It's just temporary." Relief flashed across her features, but only for a moment. "All right," Catherine whispered. "Just remember, we're in this together." Andrew enveloped her in a hug, the weight of his double life pressing down like a cage around his heart. He couldn't deny that Catherine's presence provided comfort, a respite from the chaos, but his phone buzzed with a text from Elena as he held his wife, and he couldn't resist sneaking a glance once Catherine looked away. The text read, "I miss you. Need to see you tonight." That night, Andrew insisted he had a late meeting with an overseas investor. Catherine believed him, or at least she pretended to. But her eyes brimmed with tears once he left. She walked to the nursery they were designing, running her fingers across a tiny pair of blue booties. She tried to ignore the dread brewing in her heart. As Catherine's due date approached, her health became increasingly delicate. Doctors advised her to minimize stress and prioritize rest. She found herself needing more of Andrew's presence, not just financially but emotionally. She yearned to share her worries, her hopes, the subtle shifts in the baby's movements that she felt each day. But Andrew's presence was ephemeral. He was physically in their grand house only half the time. His mind seemed always somewhere else. In truth, Andrew was embroiled in an intense negotiation with a consortium of investors for his downtown Los Angeles real estate project. The numbers involved were astronomical $150 million to secure prime land intended for a luxury hotel, private condos, and high-end retail. If successful, Andrew would join the ranks of legendary tycoons, a dream he'd harbored since the days he lived in a cramped studio apartment. Elena, too, was pushing him to accelerate their relationship. She hinted that he should consider leaving Catherine, especially given the baby's birth would only complicate matters further. Whenever Andrew resisted the idea, she'd remind him of the excitement and ambition they shared, painting a future where they would be unstoppable partners in business and in life. Caught between these two forces, Andrew began to unravel. Every day, he juggled urgent phone calls, clandestine rendezvous with Eleanor, and concerned messages from Catherine. The guilt and anxiety gnawed at him, but the thought of halting his passionate affair felt impossible. One evening, Catherine made a desperate move. Feeling a sharp pain in her back, she called Andrew repeatedly, only to be sent to voicemail again and again. In a panic, she rang his executive assistant, who reluctantly divulged that he was at a private dinner discussing a business matter. Catherine, trembling, clutched her phone. She knew Andrew's deal was crucial, but her heart pounded with fear. What if there was a complication with her pregnancy, and he wasn't there? Finally, Andrew answered. "Catherine, I'm in the middle of something urgent," he hissed into the phone, stepping outside the upscale restaurant where he'd been dining with Elena and 2 potential investors. "Is this absolutely necessary, Andrew?" she said through tears. "I'm in pain. I'm scared. Something is wrong." A flicker of concern crossed his features. "Did you call Dr. Fletcher?" She nodded, though he couldn't see. "He's on his way. But I need you, Andrew. Please come home." The moment stretched taut. Andrew glanced back at the restaurant's floor-to-ceiling windows. Eleanor watched him from inside her expression, stern, wanting him to conclude the call. The investors were sipping their wine, glancing at their phones. This dinner was crucial for the future of his empire. Yet Catherine's voice trembled with genuine fear. "Okay," Andrew said softly, pinching the bridge of his nose. "I'll come home. I'm on my way." When he returned to the table, Elena raised an eyebrow. "You're leaving my wife. She's experiencing complications. I have to go." Elena's eyes hardened. "These men flew in from Tokyo for this meeting." Andrew clenched his jaw. "I can't ignore Catherine's needs right now." He paid the bill hastily, apologized to the investors, and left. Elena's gaze followed him, smoldering with disappointment. She hated how Catherine, unseen and distant, still held the power to pull Andrew away. Meanwhile, Catherine waited anxiously at home, doubled over in pain. When Andrew arrived, he found her pale-faced, breathless tears streaming. Dr. Fletcher examined her, concluding that while the baby was healthy, Catherine's stress levels were alarmingly high. She needed her husband's consistent emotional support, not just a promise of wealth. That night, Andrew slept fitfully. Catherine dozed off in his arms, relieved he was there. But Andrew lay awake, mind churning. He felt trapped in his responsibilities, uncertain where his heart truly lay. He wanted to be a good father and husband. He also wanted to pursue the scorching, thrilling romance with Elena. He convinced himself that he could keep both worlds separate, at least for now. Catherine's suspicions solidified the next day. While Andrew was at a morning meeting, she gathered laundry to wash. She picked up one of his suit jackets from the bedroom floor and felt a phone vibrating in the pocket. Confused, Catherine pulled out a sleek second phone. It was locked, requiring a passcode, but the screen briefly lit up with a name she'd never seen before. Eleanor Rossi, accompanied by a text preview. "Last night was unforgettable. Thinking about you." Catherine's heart lurched. A cold wave swept over her. Her mind raced with 1,000 explanations. Could it be just a business contact? A flirtatious client? No. The tone was too personal. She felt dizzy sinking onto the bed phone, clutched in her hand. The baby kicked inside her as though sensing her turmoil. Andrew had another phone, one she'd never known existed. Catherine tried every passcode she could think of, birthdays, anniversaries, but none worked. Eventually, she placed it on the bedside table, trembling with anger and heartbreak. When Andrew returned that evening, Catherine was seated in the living room, the secret phone in her hand. He froze in the foyer, color draining from his face. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Catherine's voice cut through the silence. "Who is Elena Rossi?" A million lies fluttered through Andrew's mind, but Catherine's tearful eyes told him any deception would only deepen the wound. He started to stammer. She's a work contact." Catherine shot up from the couch, a trembling hand pressing against her pregnant belly. "Don't lie to me, Andrew. I saw the message she sent." How long have you been seeing her?" He closed his eyes, breathing heavily. "It's complicated, Catherine." "Complicated," she spat, voice breaking. "You're carrying on an affair while I'm pregnant with your child." He stepped forward, arms raised in a pleading gesture. "I never wanted to hurt you. Elena and I, it just happened. I promise it doesn't change how I feel about you." Catherine let out a bitter laugh, tears streaking her cheeks. "It already has. You've been distant, absent and lying to me for months. How could you do this to us?" Andrew stared at her guilt etched into his features. He saw the heartbreak he'd caused, recognized his own selfishness. He tried to approach her, but she took a step back. "Catherine, I felt trapped in my routines, and Elena. She was new, exciting. I'm sorry." "I am. I never meant for things to go this far." She shook her head in disbelief. "You're sorry? That's all you have to say?" For the next hour, they argued, tears and accusations filling the once peaceful home. The baby's due date was just weeks away, and Catherine's voice cracked with every plea for Andrew to end the affair. He insisted he would break it off. He promised to do the right thing for the family. By the time the shouting subsided, Catherine was physically and emotionally drained. Andrew helped her to their bed, offering water and rubbing her back to soothe the tension. Though Catherine let him comfort her, she couldn't suppress the aching betrayal twisting inside. She wanted to believe he'd stop seeing Elena, but she sensed the hold Elena had on him ran dangerously deep. Despite Andrew's vows to end things, Elena wasn't prepared to let go. When Andrew tried to break it off, she replied with practiced tears and a flurry of accusations. "I gave you my time, my energy. You promised me we'd build something incredible together," she hissed. "Don't you dare walk away just because your wife found out." Andrew felt cornered by Elena's fury and charmed by her raw charisma all at once. He tried to reason with her. "You don't understand. Catherine's pregnant, and this affair is tearing everything apart." Elena's eyes blazed. "Don't insult me. I know exactly what's at stake. But did you think you could just use me and throw me away? Remember the NDA you signed for this real estate deal? All that insider information you confided in me when you needed someone to strategize with. If you walk away, you'll be leaving me with a lot of secrets, ones that might interest your competitors." Andrew's stomach twisted. Over the months, he'd shared confidential business plans with Elena. She was cunning and well-connected in PR. If word got out about certain aspects of his negotiations, it could ruin the entire deal. Worse, it could spark legal troubles for him. Elena knew precisely where and how to apply pressure. Caught in this web, Andrew continued to see Elena, albeit in secret. He spun a new set of lies to Catherine, insisting that he was wrapping up his project so he could dedicate all his time to her and the baby. Catherine, though still seething from betrayal, tried to believe him. She attended her prenatal checkups alone more often than not, refusing to let Andrew accompany her until he could prove the affair was over. It happened on a night that should have been celebratory. Andrew had just closed the gargantuan downtown Los Angeles deal. His real estate acquisition was finally secured. He returned home, mind exhilarated by the success and anxious about how to juggle his double life's next phase. Catherine was in the living room sorting through a pile of baby clothes. She looked up, exhaustion and heartbreak etched into her face. Before Andrew could speak, his phone buzzed. Elena again. Catherine shot him a scornful look. "Are you still in contact with her?" she asked, her tone hollow. He swallowed hard. "It's just about the real estate deal," he lied. "Nothing personal." Catherine stared at him, her voice trembling with anger. "I've tried to be patient, Andrew, but I'm done with the excuses. Our child is due soon, and you are still chasing after that woman. I need you to pick who you want in your life, me and our baby, or your mistress." Andrew's phone buzzed again, and Catherine grabbed it from the table before he could react. She saw another message from Elena. "I miss you, Andrew. We should celebrate tonight." Seething. Catherine turned on him. "It's not just business. You keep lying and I—" She broke off, tears streaming down her face. "I can't take it anymore." Andrew reached out to snatch the phone back. "Give me that!" he shouted, panic surging. Their voices rose, echoing against the high ceilings of their opulent home. Catherine clutched the phone to her chest, and Andrew lunged to retrieve it. In a split second of fury and desperation, he shoved her aside harder than he ever meant to. Catherine stumbled. She was heavily pregnant, unbalanced. She fell backwards onto the hardwood floor with a sickening thud. For a terrifying moment, everything froze. Catherine's eyes were wide with shock. Pain contorted her face, and a sharp cry tore from her throat. Andrew gasped, heart pounding. He rushed to her side, dropping to his knees. "Oh God, Catherine, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean— Are you okay?" She whimpered, hands cradling her stomach. Pain shot through her body, and she struggled to breathe. I think something's wrong." Andrew's entire world narrowed to that moment, the horror of what he'd done. He fumbled for his phone, ignoring Elena's messages now, and dialed 911. As he relayed their address to the operator, Catherine lay curled on the floor, tears and panic in her eyes. In the minutes before the ambulance arrived, Andrew held Catherine's hand, apologizing over and over. He could hardly breathe, paralyzed by the realization he had physically harmed the woman carrying his child. This single act, born out of desperation and rage, would irrevocably change everything. Paramedics arrived, strapping Catherine to a gurney, hooking her up to monitors. She winced with every bump. Andrew rode along in the ambulance panic, scorching his veins. The paramedics asked routine questions. But Andrew's guilt made him feel like every syllable revealed his darkest secrets. At the hospital, they rushed Catherine into an examination room. The sight of bright fluorescent lights and frantic nurses hammered Andrew's nerves. He paced the hallway, hands shaking. Dr. Fletcher emerged grave-faced. "There's a risk of premature labor. We need to monitor Catherine closely. She's under immense stress, and that fall could have caused complications." Andrew tried to speak, but no sound emerged. Guilt hammered him with relentless force. Dr. Fletcher eyed him with disapproval. "I understand tensions are high, Andrew, but Catherine and the baby's well-being must be your priority. She needs calm, no more stress." For hours, Andrew remained by Catherine's bedside. She dozed in and out of sleep, receiving IV fluids and medication to prevent early labor. When she finally opened her eyes, Andrew gently squeezed her hand. "Catherine, he began. She turned her face away, tears slipping down her cheeks. Her voice cracked barely above a whisper. "Don't." Andrew felt as though his heart was being crushed in a vice. He realized how far he'd fallen from the proud husband anticipating fatherhood, to a man who had literally knocked his wife down because of another woman. He wanted to tear the last few months from his life, to rewrite every moment he'd chosen Eleanor over Catherine. The baby's vital signs remained steady, but Catherine was forced to remain in the hospital for close observation. Friends, neighbors, and even Andrew's mother visited. None fully understood the cause of Catherine's accident. Andrew had given a vague explanation about her slipping. Catherine remained silent, her eyes hollow. Andrew's PR-minded thought was to keep the real story quiet, but the guilt festered. Each time he met Catherine's gaze, he felt her fear her heart break, and the intangible distance that now separated them like a black canyon. He also felt a wave of self-loathing, realizing that in pursuit of ambition and pleasure, he had betrayed everything that once mattered. As Catherine lay in the hospital recovering, Andrew faced another blow. Elena had learned of Catherine's hospitalization and the real reason behind it. Perhaps she heard from a mutual acquaintance, or perhaps Andrew himself confessed too much in a moment of panic. Regardless, she seized the opportunity. Eleanor threatened to expose Andrew's affair if he didn't fulfill her demands, a public acknowledgement of their relationship once Catherine was stable, a promise to financially back her new PR firm, and a guarantee that she'd remain a key advisor in his real estate ventures. Her emails were coldly explicit, enumerating details of their affair and the business secrets he'd confided in her. If Andrew refused, she promised to leak it all to the media and his key investors. Cornered, Andrew sought legal advice. He feared that if Elena went public, it would destroy not only his business reputation, but also any remaining hope of salvaging his marriage. He had built an empire on trust and the illusion of impeccable character. A scandal of this magnitude could see him ostracized, possibly even facing lawsuits for unethical conduct. Worse still, the knowledge that he'd harmed Catherine and almost jeopardized the pregnancy made him certain that the only moral path was to break all ties with Eleanor. But Eleanor was cunning. He could not simply pay her off. She wanted more than money. She wanted status and power. Caught in this tempest, Andrew made an ill-advised decision. He tried to broker a secret deal with Elena, a sizable lump sum. Payment. Hush money, combined with a promise to give her a minor role in one of his new companies. He believed this would placate her enough to vanish from his life. Yet as soon as the money landed in Elena's account, she demanded even more. She threatened to come clean to Catherine, to appear on national television, to publish text messages and photos. Andrew realized too late that he had handed over the leverage Elena needed to tighten her control. Throughout Catherine's hospital stay, Andrew visited daily, though their conversations were terse and stilted. Each day, Dr. Fletcher reported that Catherine's condition was improving the baby stable. Yet her emotional wounds were raw and deep. She asked Andrew more than once to leave her alone to let her recover without his presence. He refused to abandon her. One afternoon, as sunlight filtered through the drawn curtains, Andrew found the courage to speak. "Kath, I can't begin to apologize for what I did. It was inexcusable, and I'm ashamed of who I've become." She stared at the window silent. His voice trembled. "I let ambition blind me. I let lust for success and for Elena lead me astray. But I swear to you, I want to fix this. I'll do anything to make it right." Catherine blinked back tears. "Then end it. End it for good. Cut her out of your life, and tell me the truth about everything." He nodded, swallowing hard. "I will. I promise." She turned to him, searching his face for any hint of duplicity. "Andrew, this isn't just about you and me anymore. I'm bringing a child into this world, and I can't have this chaos. If you want to repair anything, you'll have to be honest and put our family first, truly, this time." Andrew reached for her hand, relieved when she let him hold it. "I will, Catherine. I swear." Within that hospital room, Andrew felt a spark of hope. For the first time, he understood the gravity of what he was risking. The monstrous lie he'd been living had already done irreparable harm. But maybe, just maybe, he could salvage something. Buoyed by the possibility of redemption, Andrew requested a final meeting with Elena at her high-rise apartment in downtown Los Angeles. He came prepared. His attorney had drafted a cease-and-desist letter threatening legal action if Elena continued to blackmail him. He also brought a single check funds to reimburse the hush money he'd previously given her. This time, he was resolute. No more payoffs, no more deals. Elena greeted him at the door, in a sleek black dress, her smile frigid. "I see you finally decided to crawl back," she said, stepping aside to let him in. Andrew walked in, scanning the minimalist decor. The view from her floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the LA skyline sparkling with possibility. "I'm not here to crawl back," he replied, voice steady. "I'm here to end this for good." He placed the envelope on the glass coffee table. "Inside is a letter from my legal team. It outlines the legal ramifications you'll face if you continue to threaten or defame me. And this check," he slid another slip of paper forward, "is the exact sum I paid you before. I'm not buying your silence. I'm returning the money so you have no leverage claiming it was hush money or an investment. We're done." Elena's face darkened. "You think a piece of paper can stop me? You think I care about your attorneys? I think you'll care about the countersuits and potential charges if you try to release any fabricated or private information," Andrew shot back. "You're free to speak the truth about our affair, any lie I have to face. But if you lie or twist facts to sabotage my business, you'll face serious consequences." Elena clenched her jaw, pacing the length of her living room. "You're throwing everything away, Andrew. We could have built an empire together." Andrew gazed at her, recalling the thrilling nights, the heady excitement she brought. Yet in that moment, all he felt was sorrow for the man he'd become. "I have a family, Elena. My wife and child come first." She scoffed. "Now you remember your family. After all we did." His expression hardened. "I made mistakes, terrible ones. This ends now. I won't negotiate or plead anymore. Do what you must, but stay out of my life." Something in Andrew's unwavering tone gave Elena pause. Her eyes flickered with a mix of anger, regret, and maybe even admiration for his newfound resolve. But she refused to let it show. "Fine," she finally hissed, "but don't forget Andrew. I can still go public. Good luck keeping your perfect image." Andrew turned to leave. At the door, he hesitated. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "I'm sorry I led you on. But this is over." With that, he walked out into the corridor, shoulders tight with tension. He half expected Elena to run after him or to fling more insults, but all he heard was the echo of the door slamming behind him. Though anxiety twisted in his gut, he felt the first real sense of clarity in months. News of Andrew's affair did reach certain circles. Elena, furious, leaked enough rumors to cause a minor scandal among Los Angeles's elite. A few tabloids published speculative pieces about Andrew's personal life, though none had solid evidence to run a definitive exposé. Some investors grew skittish, prompting Andrew to grant a press conference, clarifying that his personal matters would not affect his business. His lawyers threatened lawsuits against any entity that broadcasted unverified claims about the assault on Catherine. Meanwhile, Catherine was discharged from the hospital, placed on strict bed rest until her delivery. Andrew moved back into their home, devoting his time to her care. Tensions lingered. Catherine often turned away from him when he tried to help, the memory of being shoved and the heartbreak of betrayal still fresh. Yet Andrew persisted, determined to show her that his remorse was genuine. Their house, once filled with the clamor of social gatherings and business calls, fell hushed. Andrew cancelled most appointments, restricting calls to short bursts in another room. Each day, he read to Catherine, prepared her meals under doctor's guidelines, and assisted her with everything from adjusting pillows to massaging her swollen ankles. Slowly, the walls she'd built around herself began to crack, allowing small glimmers of hope. One late afternoon, Catherine looked at him, voice soft. "I'm scared." He placed his hand over hers. "Scared of what?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Scared you'll hurt me again. Not just physically, but emotionally. I don't know how to trust you anymore." Andrew's throat tightened. He knelt by her side, heart aching. "I understand. I can't promise it'll be easy, but I'll spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of your trust." She searched his face, pain and longing intermingled. "I want to believe you." He kissed the back of her hand gently, letting his tears fall. "I love you, Catherine. I let darkness overshadow that truth. But I do love you." Time passed with agonizing slowness. Their communications improved bit by bit. Catherine began to share her anxieties about the upcoming birth. Andrew reassured her, reminding her that Dr. Fletcher was confident the baby would be healthy. Although their marriage was riddled with fractures, they were both fighting for the same future, a safe arrival for their child, and a chance at renewal. It was a humid summer evening when Catherine went into labor. Weeks of bed rest culminated in a sudden rush of contractions strong enough to send them speeding back to the hospital. Andrew gripped her hand, the entire ambulance ride, comforting her through every searing wave of pain. He felt the weight of redemption in that grip, praying for a miracle that would deliver both mother and child safely. At the hospital, Catherine was wheeled into the delivery room. Andrew stayed by her side, pushing aside the haunting memories of the last time they were there. Dr. Fletcher and the nurses moved quickly, hooking Catherine up to monitors. The labor was tense. Her body was still recovering from the trauma of the fall, and the baby's heartbeat occasionally wavered. Hours passed like a fever dream. Catherine screamed, tears of pain mingling with fear. Andrew held her hand, whispering encouragement. His own tears dampened his shirt collar, every muscle taut with desperation. He kept recalling that night he shoved her, the look in her eyes, the danger he'd put them in. Now he wanted nothing more than to ensure their child arrived safely. At last, a piercing newborn cry shattered the tension. Dr. Fletcher held up a tiny baby boy, swaddled and perfect, wailing at the top of his lungs. Catherine collapsed back against the pillows, tears of relief streaming down her flushed cheeks. Andrew felt his own breath catch in his throat, a maelstrom of gratitude, guilt, and overwhelming love surging through him. The nurses placed the baby on Catherine's chest. She gazed down at their son, eyes brimming with awe, running a trembling hand across his soft cheek. Andrew leaned in, pressing a tender kiss to Catherine's forehead. "He's beautiful." He choked out tears falling freely. "Thank you for giving us this miracle." Catherine locked eyes with him, a fragile smile on her lips. In that raw moment, no words were needed. Their child's tiny heartbeat pulsed between them, forging an unbreakable bond that overshadowed every betrayal and lie, at least for that moment. The hospital room had grown quieter with each passing day. Machines no longer beeped with urgency. Nurses came and went in softer tones. Catherine's condition had stabilized, and Aaron, tiny, pink, and full of new life, was now the quiet anchor at the center of it all. But the true healing wasn't happening in the blood pressure readings or discharge charts. It was unfolding in the slow, fragile space between Catherine and Andrew. Every day, Andrew showed up. He brought fresh flowers, held Aaron without being asked, and stood by Catherine's bedside without pushing for forgiveness. He read her poetry, old love letters he once wrote, and never sent, and sat silently when she needed space. There were no grand declarations, just presence. That presence mattered more than he realized. Catherine watched him through guarded eyes. She saw the tension in his shoulders, the quiet remorse that haunted every word he spoke. He was no longer the man who breezed through meetings with charm and confidence. That version of Andrew had been stripped away. What stood before her now was someone raw, humbled, and broken, but trying. One evening after Aaron had drifted off in her arms, Catherine spoke softly. "I never thought I'd end up here," she said, her voice barely more than a breath. "Not just in a hospital bed, but here with you. Wondering if I'm crazy to let you stay." Andrew, seated beside her, looked up slowly. "You're not crazy." "I might be," she said, her eyes filling with unshed tears. "After what you did, what you hid, what you risked. You don't just get to walk back into this room and ask me to pretend it didn't happen. I'm not asking you to pretend." Andrew said, his voice steady. "I'm asking you to let me prove I can be better." She turned her head away, staring at the monitor that displayed her vitals. "Do you know how terrifying it was? Lying on that floor, wondering if I'd lose the baby. Wondering if I'd lost you completely." Andrew blinked, his throat tightening. "I see it in your eyes every day. And I hate myself for it." "I loved you so much," she whispered. "Even when you started slipping away, I held on. I made excuses. I told myself we were just growing, not breaking." Andrew reached over gently, placing his hand over hers. "I don't deserve your love. I don't. But if there's even a piece of it left, I want to fight for it." Catherine looked at their hands, his rough with guilt, hers trembling with uncertainty. She wanted to pull away to protect herself, but she didn't. "I don't know if I can ever forget," she said. "I don't know if I want to." "You shouldn't," he said. "What I did should never be erased. But I promise you, Catherine, I've ended it. Elena's out of my life. I'm stepping back from the company, all that ambition, all that running. I see now it was just me, trying to outrun my own emptiness." She said nothing. "Being here, he continued watching you give birth to our son, watching you hold on when I gave you every reason to let go. It changed me. I don't want the life I built before. I want this. I want you. I want Aaron." Catherine closed her eyes. The ache in her heart remained, but so did something else, something unfamiliar, but not unwelcome. "Hope. I'm not making promises," she said finally. "I can't just hand you my heart again like nothing happened." "I know," he said. "I need boundaries. I need space. And if I see even a hint of dishonesty, if I feel unsafe for even a second, I will walk away and never look back." He nodded slowly. "I would expect nothing less." For the first time in weeks, a flicker of relief crossed her face. She glanced at Aaron, who stirred softly in her arms. "We named him Aaron," she said. "It means mountain of strength." Andrew smiled faintly. "That's perfect." The next morning, Catherine was discharged. Andrew insisted on driving her home. He opened every door, carried every bag, adjusted every seat. Not because she asked, but because he needed to. Back at the house, things were quiet. The once grand, echoing estate felt different now. Not in its size or elegance, but in the energy that filled it. Catherine walked from room to room, like she was seeing it all for the first time. Every photo on the walls, every corner where shadows once lingered. In the nursery, she placed Aaron in his crib and turned to find Andrew standing at the doorway watching. "You sure you want to be here?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "Not because I have nowhere else to go, but because this is the only place I want to be." She didn't smile, but she didn't turn him away. And for now, that was enough. The weeks after Aaron's birth passed in a haze of sleepless nights, soft lullabies and whispered apologies. The rhythm of life slowed to the heartbeat of a newborn, fragile, unpredictable, and beautiful. But behind the tender feedings and shared diaper duties was a deeper, more delicate reconstruction, one that required more than bottles and baby wipes. It required trust. Andrew knew that regaining Catherine's trust would be the greatest challenge of his life and the most important. The old days of grand gestures and flashy promises were gone. Catherine didn't want diamonds. She wanted stability. She wanted truth. And she made that clear. In a quiet conversation one night while Aaron lay sleeping between them in a bassinet, Catherine spoke the words Andrew had been preparing to hear. "I'm not going to pretend things are fine," she said, her voice even. "We're not just going to bounce back like nothing happened. What you did, it broke something in me. And I don't know if I'll ever see you the same way again." Andrew listened without interruption, the weight of her words slicing deeper than any accusation. He nodded. "I understand," he said softly. "And I won't ask for your forgiveness, not yet. I'll earn it, day by day. No shortcuts." So they began therapy, together, separately, with professionals who didn't sugarcoat, who helped them pull back layers of wounds and truths, forcing them to confront the reasons behind Andrew's betrayal. Catherine's quiet suffering and the silence that had crept into their marriage long before Elna ever arrived. Catherine voiced her pain, the nights she felt unseen, the months when Andrew had chosen ambition over affection. Andrew confessed his insecurities, the need to feel powerful, the fear of becoming ordinary, and the reckless hunger that led him to chase validation outside their home. There were tears, fights, sessions when Catherine stormed out, and days Andrew questioned whether they'd ever be whole again. But there were breakthroughs too. Catherine began painting again, transforming a spare room into a studio. The scent of oil paint returned to their home, and with it a sliver of her old self, vibrant, expressive open. Andrew stepped back from business. He promoted a COO to manage daily operations and blocked out time each afternoon to be present. Not just physically, but emotionally. He read to Aaron, learned how to cook simple meals for Catherine, and started journaling, something their therapist had suggested. Slowly, the mansion changed. The echo of high heels and corporate calls gave way to baby laughter, the shuffle of socked feet, and the quiet rustle of pages turned in late-night reading sessions. Catherine noticed. She noticed when Andrew turned down a lucrative speaking event to attend Aaron's first checkup. She noticed when he turned off his phone without being asked. She noticed when he sat beside her, night after night, just to talk, not as a husband, desperate to defend himself, but as a man trying to listen. And although the memory of the shove, the lies, and Elena's name still lingered like a shadow, Catherine allowed herself, slowly, carefully, to believe again. Not in fairy tale redemption, but in effort, in humility, in growth. Their story was no longer about perfection. It was about rebuilding one fragile step at a time. The morning sun streamed gently through the arched windows of the Monroe estate, casting soft golden light on the hardwood floors of the nursery. A year had passed, 12 long, harrowing months, since that night of heartbreak and fear. But now the house echoed with the sound of baby giggles, the flutter of balloons, and the scent of vanilla cake drifting in from the kitchen. Aaron Monroe was turning one. The celebration was modest by their old standards. No socialites, no photographers, no catered grandeur. Just close family, a few old friends, and the people who had stood by them when their world collapsed. Laughter rang out from the backyard where folding chairs dotted the lawn, and a banner fluttered in the breeze. Happy first birthday, Aaron. Catherine stood at the edge of the patio, a glass of lemonade in hand. Her eyes followed Aaron as he sat in his high chair, tiny fists gleefully smashing bits of cake onto his tray. Beside him, Andrew crouched down, laughing with unrestrained joy, frosting smudged on the cuff of his shirt. A quiet smile touched Catherine's lips. She didn't forget, she never would. The memory of the shove, the betrayal, the hospital, and the grief would always live somewhere inside her. But today wasn't about the past. It was about the present they'd fought to rebuild and the future they were learning to trust again. After the guests departed and the last of the paper plates were tossed, the house returned to its peaceful hush. Aaron slept upstairs, tuckered out from the excitement, and Catherine found herself in the living room with Andrew sitting on the floor amid wrapping paper and ribbons. She looked over at him, her voice soft. He had a good day. Andrew nodded, eyes still focused on a half-opened gift. He did. And you looked happy today. There was a pause. I was, she admitted. Not because I forgot, but because we got here. Andrew turned to her, his expression open, vulnerable. I know I'll never be able to erase what I did, and I don't expect you to forget, but I hope more than anything that we can keep building. Something better. He reached out, gently placing his hand over hers. She didn't pull away. Instead, she looked down at their hands and let out a soft breath. I never thought I'd say this, but I believe you. Not because of what you've said, but because of what you've shown. You didn't just ask for forgiveness. You worked for it. And that matters. Andrew's eyes glistened. You matter. You and Aaron are my entire life. They sat in silence, the weight of shared pain easing under the warmth of quiet understanding. A few minutes later, Aaron stirred upstairs, letting out a muffled cry. Catherine stood to check on him, but Andrew placed a hand on her arm. I'll go, he said. Get some rest. She watched him ascend the stairs, and for the first time in a long time, she felt something settle in her chest. Not blind trust, not naive hope, but peace. Earned, deliberate, fragile peace. In the quiet of their rebuilt life, Catherine knew the road ahead would still have bumps. But after the storms they had weathered this was a new dawn. And it was enough. Some stories end in irreparable tragedy. Others choose a hopeful new beginning. For Andrew and Catherine Monroe, betrayal and heartbreak paved a treacherous path to redemption. Though scars and memories never fully fade, their commitment to change brought forth the promise of a stronger tomorrow. Andrew discovered that success means little without someone to share it with, and Catherine found the courage to forgive without losing her self-respect. Their journey stands as a reminder that even from the deepest depths of pain, it's possible to rise and rebuild.